Hello, this is DrPaulCottrell, and I want to bring up a couple topics. In this video, I'm going to bring up the Federal Reserve and the market disruption and what it means short-term and long-term. And in another video, I'm going to start talking about the Ukrainian crisis in detail in my perspective on what's going on. So just for the ones that are new to the channel and may have not known, my mother passed away in the nursing home. She had a lot of physical ailments. She had diabetes. She had cardiovascular issues. She had many heart attacks over the years. She had stents that were put in, so she had ischemic disease. She was epileptic. She had her, muscles, because of her inactivity, the muscles in her legs were not working very well. She had a fluid collection in her legs, edema. So my father was taking care of her, but unfortunately he ended up having severe ischemic disease. It's called ischemic dementia, and he no longer could take care of her. So both of them were put into a nursing home. Both of them contracted COVID. My father's pretty much stable. My mother died from complications to her heart disease and a pulmonary infection. She died on the 19th, and today marks the 7 days, the ending of the 7 days of mourning for sitting Shiva. So, that's the, where we're at right now, because it's an immediate relative. After sitting Shiva, you mourn for 30 days. And if it's a parent, you go beyond that and you mourn for 11 months. So I'm in that process, and, we say mourner's Kaddish every day, and that's the way it is. So I wrote this about a week ago. So now, after sitting Shiva is done, we no longer have that. And we continue on with the fight of the crisis of COVID and all the tangential things that are happening economically, geopolitically, in terms of domestic policies, the Biopatriot Act, and everything else. All right, so the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is in control of the money supply. Its mandate in the United States is full employment and controlling of inflation. So it has what is called dual mandate. And that dual mandate is different than, let's say, the central bank in the European Union, the ECB. Their main concern is inflation, not full employment. So there was some wisdom in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which established the Federal Reserve that we know today. And that wisdom is that you have to have full employment, or that you're targeting full employment and controlled inflation. Through modern theory of economics in a developed nation, that is usually targeted, the inflation is usually targeted at about 2%. So it's called 2% targeting. So the mandate that they have, the Federal Reserve mandate, is full employment, and controlled inflation. Okay. Now, full employment is around, depending on the economists you're talking about, it's around 4 to 5% unemployment. Now we're at about, I believe, 3.8 or 3.9% at this moment in time. So we're at full employment. To control inflation, they target around what is called the 2% target. And as you know, inflation kind of, goes up and down, right? And they have a target, right? And that is 2%. If it's too low, then that means it's deflationary and that they may need to put liquidity into the market. Or if it's too high, then they have to withdraw liquidity. Same thing with unemployment. If unemployment starts to go up over a certain target, let's say 5%, then they have to put liquidity in the market to stimulate demand. If it's too low, the unemployment's too low, they need to withdraw liquidity. So that's basically the dynamic, but they can fight each other, right? You can have full employment, but low inflation. It's not that common, but it could happen. You could have high inflation and low employment, which is the current situation that we're at. We're at about an annualized 7% inflation. And you could have a situation where you had high unemployment and high inflation. And that is a concern because if you're trying to control two different things that may fight each other at times, the Federal Reserve is pinched. So in this sense, if you have high unemployment, let's say 7% unemployment, and you have, let's say, high inflation, and let's say 7% annualized, right? If you have high inflation, then what will happen is the Federal Reserve usually in high unemployment will be putting liquidity into the market. Well, it can't do that because by putting liquidity in the market, it will increase inflation. So in this case, what normally will happen is I think, I come from the philosophy that you would withdraw liquidity in the market, the unemployment would go up. So you withdraw liquidity in the market, so you're taking cash out of the market. The inflation should go down, unemployment will go up, and then you have another tool, which is the fiscal tool from Congress, where you could have some fiscal policies that are stimulatory and tax cuts. And that should get things back into balance. So this is kind of like a situation where the system isn't working right. It's almost going, in terms of, let's say, cardiovascular, it's going into some sort of AFib, and you have to shock it. You have to shock the system. Well, this is kind of this has to go through a shock to get it pulsing again in the right rhythm, where you have controlled unemployment of 4 to 5% and controlled inflation targeted at about 2%. Okay, now that's for a developed economy. It's a little different for developing economies, but okay, now that's just the background of what the Federal Reserve is supposed to be doing. Now, where are we at right now? All right, so Chairman Powell, he's the head of the Federal Reserve, stated that there's going to be rate hikes, okay? So you have a Federal Reserve, the Fed funds rate, all right? And it is stepped up and stepped down, right, over time, right? And there's these cycles that the Federal Reserve goes in, right? So with that said, Chairman Powell said, telegraphed that there's going to be at least 4 rate hikes. Now, Jamie Dimon said that it's probably going to be about 7. He runs JP Morgan. I think it's going to be more than that. I think this is going way into 2023. All right. So we're at 2022. They meet every quarter. So normally you meet and you do a rate hike or stay constant or go down. All right. They're telegraphing already that they're going to do a rate hike. So, so what's going to happen is that wherever we're at right now, and I'd have to look to figure out what the federal funds rate is at the moment. It's, let me see, hold on. Okay, it looks, I think it's at a quarter point, at a quarter point. All right, so it's about 0.25%. Okay, that's what we call a quarter point. All right, so here, okay, so we're in March. So right now we're at a quarter point. In March, it's going to go up a quarter point. So now it's going to be at 0.5. Most likely, there's a couple people that are saying if you're in the camp that's going to be 4 rate hikes in this year, it's 1 per quarter. Recently, because of the 7% annualized inflation, which is probably going up, so the next one is probably going to get closer to 10% than of annualized. Maybe not 10, but probably a little bit closer to 9. All right, the next time we calculate this, normally every quarter it would be another quarter point. So in the camp of 4 rate hikes this year, you're talking about March, then April, May, June. So you have the June announcement, June, July, August, September, September, October, November, December. So you got the December announcement. Okay, and each one of these is going to be a rate hike of a quarter point. That's the camp. Okay, so this would get you to 0.75. This would get you to 1.1%, and this would get you to 1 1/4. All right. Now, that's the camp that believes in 4 rate hikes this year. Okay. There is a camp out there that believe there's going to be more than 4 this year, and that it may be 6. And it is in the control of the Fed to raise rates any way they want. Normally they staircase it. They could raise rates to 5% in one day, you know, if they felt that they needed to. So they could do something like this. You know, they at a quarter point and then raise it to 5% in one shot instead of staircase it. They don't normally do that, but that's shock therapy. So there is a small camp that believes that there may be shock therapy. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be staircase. I think it would be too much disruption in the market. But there are people that believe that this is going to be maybe closer to 6 rate hikes. So that means that in between one of these normal convening quarterly meetings, what will happen is that in between they may rate hike. So that means that maybe in May or April, they do a rate hike, right? And then they do another rate hike, right? And then evaluate, and then look, it looks like they need to do another rate hike, right? And then a rate hike. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rate hikes. Okay, maybe in April, and maybe an additional one in October or November, maybe November. Okay, that would be an example of this. So that would mean that because you have 2 new rate hikes, you're going to be at 1.5 and 1.75. Okay. Now, what does this mean? All right. In the Japanese economy, over time, after their crash of 1991 or so, they kept on bringing down interest rates. Okay. I don't know what they were at before, but it's what we call zero bound. It's close to zero. It's close to zero. When it's close to zero, then that central bank can't really control the economy by stimulation or taking money out. All right. If you keep on stimulating, it gets closer and closer to negative interest rates. If you try to take money out, there's so many people that are so dependent on cheap money that the market is being bolstered on nothing but stimulus. So what the Federal Reserve is doing is smart to get out of zero bound. Now, typically, if you use what was going on, let's say in the 2000s, in developed economies, especially like the United States, a target for the federal funds rate probably should be at around 5%. All right. And that gives them, anywhere from 4 to 5%. That gives them room to, if they needed to withdraw liquidity because there's an overheated market, they could increase it to 6%. All right. So they can add 2 to 3 points, 6 to 7%. If they need to stimulate the economy, they have that buffer of 3 and 3/4 of a point to about 2 and 3/4. Or no, let me rephrase that. If they're at 5%, then they can go back down. They have more of a buffer to go back down to 0.25. Okay, so they have about a 4 and 475 buffer. If it's at 4, then they have a 3.75 buffer to get back to 2, get back to a 1/4 point. Never ending, a very low Fed funds rate is it's too tenuous for the economy, and it doesn't give the Federal Reserve enough buffer to be able to control this dual mandate that they have. All right. And it's a lesson learned from the Japanese problem with zero bound interest rates. Now, with that, people would say, well, how the federal funds rate's been working with near zero bound interest rates is that a bank like JP Morgan, okay, can borrow it at a 1/4 or at the discount at a little higher rate, but at about a 1/4 point, all right? And then they're loaning out they're loaning out at about 3.5 to 5% for mortgages, and for morts, and then for cards, credit cards, they're loaning out at about anywhere from, depending on what your credit rating is, I around 10 to 12 to 15%, right? Depending on the credit rating. So they have a huge spread, and they've been making lots of money. Zero bound interest rates you think are helping you, they're not. They're helping the bank to make more money. All right. If you go to a more realistic federal funds rate of like 5%, then what will happen is now the mortgages will start to go to about I don't know, around 7 to about 7 to about, depending on your credit rating, it could be around 7 to about 10%, maybe 9%. Credit cards, you're dealing with now 12 to 15% or higher. So the point that I'm making is that the spread for the bank, this is at normal interest rates, okay, normalized. JP Morgan borrowing a quarter point, mortgages at 3.5 to 5%, right? So let's just say 4, and credit cards at I think I put 7 to 10 or 12, 7 to 12, whatever it was. So your spread is so much wider, more for JP Morgan than with higher interest rates. Yes, it's true that the end user is paying more for their mortgage by about 5% more, 3 to 5% more, and their credit cards, they may be paying 3%, maybe up to 5% more. So this depending on the credit rating. So it is true that end user borrowers are going to be paying more on their credit and on their mortgages, on their cars, right? But the spread, the banks were making more money in zero bound than in a higher interest rate. Okay, because they can't have the same spread, because what will happen is if they can't have the same spread for them in a higher interest rate environment, because people wouldn't buy it, it'd be too expensive and it would hurt the economy. And if the economy hurts too much, then they're going to have defaults on loans, and then they have to have loan provisions, and instability starts to set in. So there is a feedback. So they can only have a certain spread for credit. Banks prefer to give you a credit card than a mortgage because the spread is so much higher for them. Okay. Even in low interest rates and high interest rates, the spread for them is 7 to 10%. The spread for them for a mortgage is less. So they prefer to give you a credit card. All right. And it's even more so the spread for credit cards in a low bound interest rate. So low bound interest rates mostly benefit banks. Yes, it is true that you have a lower interest rate for your mortgage. But if you look at the deltas, who gets the better deal? It's the bank that gets the better deal in low interest rates, not you. On top of it, when you're at low interest rates, the very low interest rates like zero bound, the market starts to become unstable, and it needs cheap money all the time because risk has been building up in the market. So the moment they try to start creating higher interest rates, then there is market turbulence. Okay, so that leads to what's going to be happening in the treasury market, the equity market, the commodity market, and the currency market. But before I bring that up, I think what's going to happen with the federal funds rate is that there's going to be possibly six this year to get to about 1.75% Fed funds rate. And when we go into 2023, we're probably going to have an additional quarter point per quarter. So an additional 1%. This is going to climb up quarterly. And we're going to get to about 2.75%. All right. This duration, I think, is probably going to go into 2024. All right. And there's going to be periods where they hold off, and then I don't think there may be in 2024, there may be some duration of holding, and then it comes back up. You'll understand why when I show you the equity market. All right, so in 2024, or maybe in 2023, but most likely in 2024, there's going to be some hold off and then an increase, a hold off and then an increase. So there's probably going to be 2 increases. So I'm thinking 6 increases in 2006, 4 increases in 2020, I'm sorry, 6 increases in 2022, 4 increases in 2023, and maybe 2 increases in 2024. So with 2 quarterly point increases, this is assuming quarterly point increases. They could do a half point if things are really getting crazy, so this will accelerate. With 2 quarterly point increases, then we're going to be at 3.25. All right, that's a lot better than zero bound, and that's a big move. This is a big move in such a short amount of time. 3.25. So I think that's where they're targeting. Okay, but this is going to probably be within some time in 2024 when we hit that target. If the inflation rate is very high, then they're going to do half a point increases, and that will accelerate this. And this, if they start doing half point increases quarterly, then this thing's getting to 5% very quickly. All right. So there may be a few half point increases. So it's going to be anywhere from 3.25 to 5. 3.25 to about 5% by 2024 or through 2024. That's my prediction. All right. Then it'll hold off, right? And then it'll start to staircase down when it needs to save the economy. All right. Okay. So that's my take on this. Now, what's going to happen to the equity? All right. So there is a inverse relationship between bonds. It's not a perfect inverse relationship, but normally what happens in an IPS, an investment policy statement, IPS, is it depending on the fund that it's managing, can be anywhere from like 70% equity to, and then, a 30% treasury, so bonds, or an 80-20, or 60-40, right? So depending on how many funds are in what ratio depends on what the inverse relationship is. So let's just do with the 60-40 rule, all right? Equities is a little bit heavier than treasury, so there's going to be not a perfect correlation. But usually what happens over time and price, when your equities start to increase, then what happens is that your bond prices start to go down. So this is bonds or treasuries, and this is equities or stock. Okay. So there's usually an inverse relationship. All right, it's not perfect, but it's close. Now, what's going to happen when the federal rate there's short term and long term. So when the Fed starts to increase the rate, the Fed funds rate, as they're increasing throughout 2023, 2022, all right? What's going to happen is long term, not short term, but long term, stocks are going to start to go up. And bonds are going to start to go down. Treasuries, okay? You know, you're going to have stochastic processes up and down, right? Up and down, right? There's going to be some stochastic processes. And at times, there's something called discoherence. The inverse relationship becomes positively correlated during disequilibrium, all right? But when you average it out, everything, usually it's inverse related. So when there's disequilibrium in the market, and it doesn't last for very long, but if you look at it from a shorter time frame, during that disequilibrium, when stocks are going up, you may actually have, as the bonds start to go down and then stocks start to go up, the bonds might go up too, all right, at the same time. And in cases of stocks starting to go down, right, you may be starting to see the bonds start to go up because people are moving into safe haven, but then something is so bad, like mortgage-backed securities failing, even the bond market starts to drop too at the same time. So this is a disequilibrium market. This is an equilibrium market. This is short term. This doesn't last for very long, days or weeks. This is more longer term. You're talking about months, years, okay? Now, what does this mean? Okay, this means for people that are investing, this means that long term, the stock market is going to go up. The long term, the bond market is going to be going down. Okay, and bonds are a bunch of things. It could be treasuries. It can be municipality bonds, you know, city bonds. It can be mortgage-backed securities, MBSs. You know, so it's a plethora of things. Now, and these things could go down quicker for different reasons, like mortgage-backed securities might go down quicker, municipality bonds probably would go down quicker, and certain long-term treasuries, you know, you have the 1 month, 3 month, you know, like the 1 month or 3 month, right? 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10, and 30 year. So these will all change at different rates. Usually the long bonds will be more stable than the shorter maturities. Okay. Now, what this means is that long term, as the Fed raises rates, the stocks are going up and the bonds are going to go down. And people would say, why is that? In the investment policy statement, it states, you know, a certain percentage. They're kind of locked in, but they have a range to work with. So they still have to invest in some bonds. But what normally happens when you have higher interest rates, the price of the bond goes down because inflation is higher, right? And as those bond prices are going down, you're not going to have as many people that want to get into the bonds. They have to invest. So they're forced to buy stock. They don't have any other choice. So we're seeing the burst of a bubble, but the bubble isn't stock. The bubble is bond market, because the Federal Reserve is getting out of the bond market. The reason why the bubble was there was because they were putting liquidity in. How did they put liquidity? They were buying bonds and putting cash into the banks that were selling the bonds back to the Federal Reserve. They're discontinuing that. That means that the banks will have less money. All right. So stocks are going to be going up. Now, people are saying, I look at the news and I'm seeing stocks going down. I said long term. You're in a disequilibrium moment because they are preparing for now the rate hikes, and they're selling off the market. So you have institutional investors, like what I used to be, and retail investors, mom and pop, investing. All right. The mom and pop investors are seeing rate hike, markets falling, right? Institutional investors have cash on hand. They have a certain, in the IPS, it's a certain amount. It's usually 5 to 10% of the portfolio is cash. All right. They have cash on hand. They're waiting for the retail investors. Now, this is an important lesson here. The retail investor is hearing the bad news in the market, and their stock was going up, and now it's starting to go down, right? And they're selling. These are the retail investors. Okay. Now, what's happening is that they're thinking, because they're used to this long liquidity that was happening from 2007, late 2007, all the way to 2022. This long liquidity. This is because of Lehman. Most of these retail investors don't remember pre-Lehman. All right. So they know nothing other than the Federal Reserve intervening in the market with high liquidity, with a high balance sheet. All right. Well, the Federal Reserve is starting to bring that down, and you're starting to see in the short run, people are getting fearful. Now, on the retailers, on the institutional side, there's a rebalancing that's taking place. They're getting out of the bond market, all right, and repositioning themselves in the equity market. So you're seeing some of the sell-off through rebalancing. But there's also kind of like at the institutional level, there's a certain percentage of the portfolio that they're bringing down into cash and waiting for the moment to buy. All right. So part of this drop, most of this drop is retail. Part of this drop is institution. So the decline is retail. All right, I should go. Yeah, the decline is due to retail. The decline in the price is also due to institutions. All right. Now, with that in mind, because it's retail and institutions with that decline, the retailers don't have the buffer like the institutions have because they have more cash. So once it reaches a certain point, all right, and this thing's going to go up and down and up and down, right? But once March happens and they raise that rate, right? They raise that rate, short term, most likely the market's going to drop. And then the institutional investors, it'll stabilize a little bit. And then shortly after that, they start inching up and buying. Because they know that the Federal Reserve is not going to stop raising rates because the inflation is at 7 to 10% annualized. And they're going to keep on raising those rates, the Federal Reserve. And the institutional investors know that if you keep on raising the rates, they can't go into the bond market. They have to go into cash. They have to go into cash, or they have to go into the stock market. So this is going to increase the stock. But during this period of time, from now to March or mid-March, you're going to see a lot of volatility. Volatility if you're looking at volatility over time, volatility is going to start to go up. All right. This is like the VIX. If you look at VIX index, all right. But if you measure volatility, and there's a lot of ways to measure volatility, but if you measure volatility, if you measure the volatility, you're going to start seeing that this will start to go up and down, and more violently the prices. And this is a sign that we're moving into a new equilibrium. That new equilibrium is this. This is the chaotic event that's taking place during the transition from cheap money to more expensive money. All right. So that's what's going to be happening in the stock market. Now, what's going to be happening in the bond market, all right, is prices are going during this period of time, because the Federal Reserve was intervening, the bond market was also kind of was buoyant. So prices were somewhat elevated in the bond market. All right. All right. So they were something like that. All right. But as this chaotic thing's going on, the prices are starting to fall much more. All right. And then what's going to happen? Now, there are days where the stock market may go up, the bond market goes down, the stock market goes down, the bond market may be going up. You know, you have that internal dynamic that's going on. But as these prices really start to take hold and this Fed funds rate starts to increase, the bond market will continue to go down. And it will stabilize at a certain point. What that is, who knows? But, you know, and it depends on at what maturity level that you're at. The maturity level, you know, in the 1 month bond to the 30-year bond, you're going to have rates. This used to be, let's say, the rate curve. Okay. Now what's going to happen is you're going to have something more like this. The rate curve is shifted up for the bond market. So bottom line is this. When the Federal Reserve starts to raise rates, you're going to have disequilibrium, and the market's going to go down, and there's going to be this chaotic thing that's going on between the bonds and the equity market. Okay. And some days it's going to be negatively correlated. Some days it's going to be positively correlated because it's in disequilibrium. But what's going to happen is that all that noise is going to start to move towards a new momentum within this social system in the market. And that is going to be a increase in stock price, a decrease in the bonds, and you're going to be harder hit in the short term than in the long term. Most likely the spread is, I think what's going to happen is that the spread on the short end of the curve is going to be more than the spread on the back end of the curve. That change. That's my guess. But that is, I think, what's going to happen. So people are all freaked out right now. The stocks are going down. Stocks are going to continue to go down because you're in a chaotic event. The Federal Reserve is changing its policy. But once it starts to show that they're moving at a quarter point and the market knows what to expect roughly, 4 to 6 increases in 2023, maybe 4 increases in 4 to 6 increases in 2022, 4 increases maybe in 2023, and potentially 2 increases in 2024. That allows for investment managers to plan their portfolios. And it's probably going to be a quarter to a half point increase each time. So it's going to be in the range of 3.75 to 5%. Or I think I measured 3.25% to 5%. So they're programming this into their assumptions for investing. Stock market long term is going to be going up. The treasury market is going to be going down. Now, what does that mean in terms of currency and social dynamic situations? Now, you got to remember, in a perfect world where there's no instability, geopolitical instability, that would hold. Stocks go up, bonds go down. Okay, but a lot of times what happens is that even though this dynamic is happening, there may be wars that take place and cause certain regions to have economic instability, such as Europe, right, with Ukraine. When they're investing, they're going to be investing in riskless or what we call risk-free assets. Those risk-free assets are the treasuries. So we may see more foreign investment in treasuries because of instability in the world, such as Taiwan and Ukraine. Okay, so what's going to happen over time? Right, is that during this instability point, there's going to be prices for bonds are going to start to go up, right? Even though there's a more heavier dynamic of trying to bring down the treasuries and the stocks to go up. All right, there's going to be periods of time where there's going to be foreign investment into risk-free assets, and those risk-free assets aren't going to be in the stock market. They're going to be in treasuries, most likely probably the 10-year treasury. And so the 10-year treasury will start to go up over time because of the instability in the market. So that's going to, this is from a foreign perspective. All right. Now, as the treasuries start to go down because of the Federal Reserve, it's somewhat boosted up from the foreign investment. So the treasuries are going down, and then all of a sudden the foreign investment starts to help boost it up, but it's still going down. So if you had a curve without instability in geopolitics, bonds would start to go down this way. But if you have some foreign investors coming in because of risk-free asset needs, then what's going to happen is this curve is going to be less severe. Okay, and then you have the stock market. The stock market would have gone like this, right? And the instability in the market may bring the stock market more like, because of war or whatever, more like that. So there's a change. No war, war. No war, war. Okay. Hopefully you get a better idea of it's a complex dynamic, and there's a lot of stochastic things that are going on. And it's not just the Federal Reserve, but also geopolitical events that take place. All right. And during, instability due to international affairs, the Federal Reserve, at certain points during this problem in Ukraine or in Taiwan, the Federal Reserve, as it's moving its interest rates, it may stay hold during a period of time because of the war, and then start to increase. I think it's more probable that you're going to hear hold as a tool by the Federal Reserve to help the economy if it starts to falter than lowering rates. The overall trend by the Federal Reserve is ending the oversupply that happened due to Lehman, and it was a combination of Lehman and the coronavirus. All right, these two big events have been major stimulus, Federal Reserve stimulus events, and also fiscal stimulus events. And unfortunately, taxation reduction was only part of that epoch. And Biden is not helping with taxes. I think in general, he's hurting people with taxes. So that hopefully gives you a better idea of what to expect by the Federal Reserve, what's going to be happening in the market. Long term, stocks are going to go up, bonds are going to go down. The severity of it going up or down, that velocity is going to be different if we have a kinetic event in Ukraine and in Taiwan. Now the question, comes up is, well, what if SARS-CoV-2 becomes crazy again? That depends on where we are with the inflation and where we are with the unemployment. If the inflation is very high and people are hoarding, the Federal Reserve is probably most likely going to side on the inflation and not so much on the unemployment. So I think that we're seeing from 2022 to 2020 through 2024 an era of rate hikes. So hopefully you get a better idea of what's going on, and I've explained it so you can manage your finances accordingly. Now, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have lots of different products. I have nano silvers, liquids, gels, soaps, lozenges. I have two different vendors. One is ABL, American Biotech Labs, and the other is Amio Life. Great products there for nano silver products. Helps neutralize pathogens. It helps boost your immune system. I have a plethora of supplements by Boomer Products, and please check that out. I have zinc, I have vitamin C, I have turmeric, I have lots of different, I have collagen, magnesium, ashwagandha. I have a lot of really good products. People are saying that they're having a problem sleeping also. I have a good night formula where it has tryptophan and melatonin in it. So take that and you have a better sleep. Better sleep will reduce stress. In addition, it will, by having better sleep, your health will get better and your memory will get better. So try that. I have Clarity Factor for people that are in school or have very demanding jobs that involve a lot of concentration. Take Clarity Factor in the morning and in the afternoon, and you'd be amazed that, wow, I can concentrate much better. So try Clarity Factor. I have C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, great for an anti-aging regimen. So please try that out. I've also explained to the public on how to reduce cardiovascular disease. A lot of the problems that we have in the United States is cardiovascular disease, ischemic disease, heart failure. There's lots of different issues with cardiovascular disease. But a big one is the building of plaque, arteriosclerosis. So by reducing the foam cells, eating up oxidized LDL, and reducing the inflammation that causes these micro tears in your endothelium, you will reduce the chances of building up the plaques, and you can shrink down the plaque buildup that you currently have. Key way to do that is reduce your inflammation by taking turmeric and resveratrol, all right, and ashwagandha. you reduce the foam cells eating up oxidized LDL by making sure you block the reactive oxygen species. You can do that with C60. It blocks the oxidation process, so you have less LDL oxidized in your blood vessel, in the wall of the blood vessel. And when the macrophages start to get inside, it'll have less to eat up that's oxidized LDL. You have less inflammation, less micro tears, less need for macrophages to even go into the inner lining of the blood vessel. So by doing that and taking K2, MK7 with D3, what that will do is bring down the depositing of your calcium in these areas of plaque. It'll bring down your calcium buildup. If you do a little bit of resistance training, what will happen is you're activating your astroblasts. All right, you have astroclasts and astroblasts, right? Or I'm sorry, osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So osteoblasts are bone cells that deposit calcium, all right? A bone matrix, all right? And osteoclasts basically eat up bone, and it helps with remodeling. Well, when you get older, what happens is that you have more osteoclasts than osteoblasts, and so you're losing bone mass. Well, if you do a little bit of resistance training, you actually have in that local environment growth factors that are recruiting the activation of osteoblasts. Well, with K2, MK7 with D3, and drinking milk and taking some calcium, you're absorbing that calcium. Whatever calcium that is deposited can slowly get into your bloodstream. And what happens is it activates calcitonin from your thyroid, and with that microenvironment of the low resistance training, it will start to deposit the calcium in your bloodstream and move it towards areas where you're training to have it deposited. So a little bit of resistance training will increase bone mass and reduce calcium blood levels. On top of it, there's this mechanism that's happening where it's kind of reducing the calcium buildup at the same time. The chances of calcium buildup and reducing some of the calcium buildup that's in your arteries. The big thing here is prevention. So if you listen to what I'm saying, ashwagandha, resveratrol, C60, turmeric, K2, MK7, and D3, and if you don't have enough fish in your diet, then omega-3. This is a great way to put yourself on a path of reduced cardiovascular disease. So there's a lot of products I have out there on my store that can help with your health. The main thing here is bring down inflammation and bring down ROS, and you will move towards a path of slower aging. Your body gets to heal, it has a stronger immune system, and you get through this crisis, and on that, you get through some of the other ailments that you may have been accumulating through your life. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to cure everything, but what it'll do is it gives you some control of preventing disease, and some disease that you may have, you may actually help to alleviate. So please go to my store and take a look at the products. I have curated boxes called anti-aging boxes that helps with your skin, slows down aging, brings down inflammation. I also have a Nano silver box that you can buy. I have lots of stuff that will help with anti-aging and help with boosting up your immune system. I also partnered up with Gail, and she produces these all natural deodorants. Please pick up one of those. I have a citrus scent version and a lavender peppermint version. They're very healthy. They're a lot better than Procter & Gamble, because Procter & Gamble has a lot of chemicals in it that you really shouldn't have. So if you use the deodorant, this is a way for you to detox your life and prevent all that poison that's in some of these products that can hurt individuals' health long term. In addition, I have one of the best toothpastes out there. So I have a Nano silver toothpaste. It whitens your teeth. It neutralizes bacteria in your oral flora. All right, and you will notice that you will have healthier teeth and healthier gums. And by having that, you're going to reduce cardiovascular disease also, and valve issues with your heart. So get some toothpaste too. It's the best that you're going to buy. You cannot get better toothpaste than what I'm selling. All right. So in a holistic way, if you look at all the products that I'm providing, it is very beneficial to your health. So get on this journey with me, where you're slowing down aging and reducing cardiovascular disease, increasing your skin health by that skin health box that I have. And you'll be amazed, on how much the body can heal itself. It's not a cure-all, but it will put you down the right path. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. In addition, I have 5 channels. So please subscribe to all those channels. I have 3 YouTube channels. I have a Brighteon channel, and I have a Rumble channel. I have the live videos on Rumble and Brighteon. Because of the censorship that is going on YouTube, I can only premiere on YouTube. All right. But so it's important that you're subscribed to all 5 channels, so you can see content. All right. And that way it gets around the censorship. In addition, please share the links from Brighteon or Rumble on social media to be able to share the content. YouTube is not going to allow you to share that content. So it doesn't make sense to share a link from YouTube. You got to share the link from Brighteon or Rumble. Some people have issues sharing links for Brighteon. Okay, then use the link from Rumble. In addition, you can support my work by donating to my website on the front page. You can donate through Stripe or through PayPal. That will help support the work I do. Or go to Patreon and subscribe for a nominal fee to support my work. But I prefer you going to the store and buying my products. But not everybody can get my products because I have a very large international audience, and it's very expensive to ship internationally, and people can't afford that. So if you want to support my work and you're international, best is to go to Patreon and support that way, or donate on my webpage, the-studio-reykjavik.com. On the homepage down at the bottom, you can donate. So, please go to the store and, get some ashwagandha. All right. This is going to help control your blood sugar levels, reduce stress. All right. It helps with adrenal health. And the turmeric is great as an anti-inflammatory. I have really good products. Try them out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting my work. Hopefully you learned something about economics, and we'll be talking shortly about Ukraine and the crisis in Europe. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.